Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. My guest today, I got two of them. First time, I think. Maybe not. No, it's not the first time. I've been doing the podcast series with my dad called Stuart Squared, where both of us interview another person. But this is the first time that I'll be moderating a conversation between Ben Ford and Michael Greenberg. Ben is the founder of Mission Control. And then Michael Greenberg is the founder of Gentleman. He's a gentleman of technology. I love that name, but he's also working on something called Third Brain, which is the automation of operations business. And Michael and Ben are sort of in similar fields, but disparate. And so we already talked beforehand about how this is going to be a space for honorable disagreement. And really getting into the juice of the arguments, because all of us have a different perception of what's going on. And the Greeks used to do it all the time. They would bounce things off of each other, and sometimes they would get heated. And so welcome to the show, both of you guys.
Super Thank cool. You. Really looking forward to this.
Yeah. So Third Brain, how did you come up with that name, Michael?
Well, it's pretty simple. I heard about this thing called second brains. And I was like, man, that would be great if it actually did any thinking. And so I started building a set of tools that would take my second brain and think for me by processing that information in various ways. And then that turned into a whole suite of knowledge work tools. And Third Brain ended up sounding like a great name for we do digital operations. So you've got your first brain, that's your team. You've got your second brain, that's all the data inside of your company. And then we build the third brain, all of the infrastructure and the thinking and the doing machines that connect that together.
So funny, because I was doing that exact thing and I had that term in my head at my previous role. Unfortunately did not get to actually build the third brain, but I got to think a lot about it. So that's super interesting. Ben, how did you come up with the name Mission Control?
Yeah, so before technology, I had a short amount of time in the military where I was a signaller, and what that meant at the turn of the 2000s was that I used analog radios from the 1950s to try and shuttle information around a commando unit in combat, which sucked. But I was working in the mission control of the unit, right? So now I do exactly the same thing, but I do it with really cool tools and AI. And so yeah, I went around a number of different potential names, and Mission Control was the one that both stuck and had a reasonably good domain name available to buy.
Okay, great. So let's take this directly into what's relevant to both of that, which is the fact that we got the first brain, we got the team, we got the second brain, we got all of the data that the team is using, and we got the third brain, which is the sort of just like this intelligence that we've now got. I don't know if I should call someone out here, but what do you think that we actually have artificial intelligence, or is it something else besides intelligence? Whoever wants to take it, just go for it.
I'll have a go if that's all right, Michael. I'm sure we both have a go, right? So I think if we're talking AI in terms of LLMs, I think we don't have intelligence. We don't have. So I've spent a lot of time with neuroscience, spent a lot of time trying to understand military doctrine through the lens of something which is very related to neuroscience, which is Boyd's OODA loop. And I think in order to have intelligence, you have to have embodiment, you have to have connection with your environment, you have to have the ability to make that cognitive loop, which I think all of our tools lack. They can approximate it. Agentic workflows that have LLMs in the middle of agents can approximate it, but they're a long way from intelligence. I think the stuff that Carl Friston's working on in Verses.ai is probably closer. But yeah, that would be my kind of high-level take on that, I think.
What about you, Michael?
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with the paper DeepMind put out, gosh, maybe 6 months or a year ago now, that categorized levels of AGI?
No.
I've not seen that, no.
Okay, so I love this framework. It goes from level 0, which is no AI, to level 5. And if you just Google like DeepMind levels of AGI, it'll be the first or second result. So level 0 is no AI. Level 5 is superhuman, where it outperforms 100% of humans.
It's only level
And
1.
they categorize the current large language models as like a level 1, level 2 now, because this paper was before GPT-4, before Llama 3. So right now we're at maybe level 2 of competency, at least 50% percentile skilled. The way I look at it, a guy like me or Ben, we can take your data, we can take your workflows, we can map your workflows, we can map your thought processes, and we can build a narrow AI system that is better than 90, 95% of people out there, maybe even 99 in some cases. But we are still hard coding a thought pattern and using predictive engines to get that to work.
Very interesting.
Spot on.
Yeah. Okay. So
Not much disagreement so far.
yeah, I got. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll find something. So if it's not artificial intelligence, is intelligence the wrong word? What should we be calling this instead of artificial intelligence? I'll hand that back to Michael.
Ooh, I would, if we want to go in like the artificial realm, I would say right now we can build very competent artificial knowledge workers for specific processes. And that, like, look, I don't know how many designers were just around for somebody to send them a thing that they liked and say, hey, make this in green for me. But I know that there was a lot of them and they're all out of the job. I don't know how many people used to write podcast show notes, but I know that industry is 5% the size it was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So no disagreement there, Ben, either?
No, I think what would we call it instead of intelligence? I think I can't remember where this quote came from, but essentially it's think of AI as infinite dumb people rather than a few smart people.
That's a great
Right.
way.
So basically it's capacity, it's not intelligence. It's like Michael said, like we can get into this later, but one thing that I've found is that the structure around LLMs is incredibly important. Like the more structure that you can give it, and this also kind of calls back to the military, right? The military orders process. The more structure that you can give, and then put an LLM in the middle of that structure with all the context and with all the, the constraints around it, just like giving a set of orders in the military. The more you can do that, the better result you get, and that's because these things are not actually intelligent, right? They do pattern matching workflows incredibly effectively. So you have a huge amount of capacity. What you don't have is actual intelligence.
So it's
Best
like
intern I've ever gotten.
So it's like the million monkeys at a typewriter for a million years. We actually have that. Whoever came up with that, the million monkeys for a million years will recreate Shakespeare. Have you heard of that? Yeah. So that's basically what we've got. Now, I heard that it was a really interesting idea that somebody said. It was one of the main AI researchers said that OpenAI, they took all the researchers and they doubled down on LLMs. They're productizing LLMs, and they have set back the foundational frontier research by 10 years by taking all of these researchers and turning them into product. And so they diverted resources from algorithms that may actually get us to AGI. Yeah, so I'm seeing, what are your thoughts, Michael?
I'll go first. Ben, you're going to have a much, I think, more informed opinion on this than I do. But I look at OpenAI as a defense contractor very similarly to Lockheed Martin or someone like that. They're a national asset.
Yeah.
And I think the most recent board appointment is like a very clear signal. It's not like they've hidden it in the past, but it's much stronger now where it's like, hey, we view this as a race with one or two other foreign powers to develop this sort of artificial superintelligence. There's not like a way in which we stop that race. And so anybody who's foolish enough to think that we are taking people who actually matter off of this sort of research doesn't understand the way like US defense works.
Yeah, because it's all coming from the defense anyway. It's all coming from there anyway. Yeah. Interesting.
And I know everything we do in operations comes out of like intelligence or defense work.
Yeah.
And because it goes to the military, they develop the concept, and then it filters down to manufacturing 10 years later, because those guys who developed the concepts exit the military into industry. And that's where they all went in the 80s and 90s, was to manufacturing. And then those same concepts get reapplied to technology 10 years after that. And that's where we are now.
Interesting. What do you think, Ben? How does it work?
I am going to offer some gentle pushback on that one.
Yeah.
So there's a book that I absolutely love, which is about the origin of the commandos in the Second World War. It's called Churchill's Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, Ungentlemanly Conduct. I can never remember. It's not, it's not as strictly historically accurate, but
It looks great though.
It shares the flavor of like what the drivers are of this. And I think big defense, or in those days, the War Office, were royally fucking up the war, right? Big groups of people congregate towards the wrong option. They pick something and they go for it. And very often the thing that they pick out of the options available is, it turns out with the benefit of hindsight to be not correct. Special operations forces do the exact opposite, right? They start with absolute chaos. They throw a bunch of shit against the wall and they figure stuff out along the way. So they've got a much more, to take it back to AI, they've got a much more kind of evolutionary search algorithm going on about potential solutions to things. And the special operations executive in World War II was utter chaos, right? They had to be protected from big defense or big war back then, because they would have been killed by the organizational immune system. And they were a bunch of nutters, right? They had a caravan maker invented limpet mines, right? They didn't have a requirement come down to say, hey, in 6 months, we're going to need limpet mines. Can you like invent limpet mines? It's just like, this guy liked blowing shit up and he invented limpet mines. And then, down the line, they figured out that there was a use for that. So I think I definitely agree with Michael that there's a lot of stuff that comes out of defense, but big defense, big procurement defense, like we have, basically everything that's not Anduril right now, I think would be incredibly likely to pick the wrong horse and then back it to the absolute death until everything's just about to be completely, gone. And then somebody, some lunatic heretic will come from left field and come up with something else.
So there's DARPA. DARPA is like hanging out in the back of my mind of just like, those guys are probably like Anduril. They've figured out a way to, for better or for worse, to like capture that craziness of intelligence, which is also the crazy wisdom on the show is also where I try to go for that, but not necessarily for purposes of war, more for purposes of peace on my end. But war is there anyway. So okay, there's one part which is the processes you're talking about, making me think that AI is going to lead to a small groups of special forces when it comes to knowledge work, basically, where you have highly capable people matched with a lot of capacity, as you were mentioned. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, actually, no, I'll save that for later. Let's drill down on this special forces kind of. Michael, have you seen this in your operations? What you kind of directly pointed to this, like this is going to change the work, the types of jobs, the amount of jobs, and what are you seeing? Where is the human going to be left inside of this?
Let me start off by saying this is the first business I'm building where I hire A players.
Oh, interesting. Cool. Okay.
I have built, my businesses in the past have been built on outsourced services.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need an A player. I need a B player who's going to show up and do the same thing exactly the same every day. And all they're there for is that paycheck and job security. And that's a very different business than what I'm building now. So that's number one. I think equally important, though, is the impact that one of those people can have is only increasing over time. And we see the studies coming out of the consulting groups where they're doing like one guy has AI, another guy doesn't, then they both have AI. The top performers 10x with AI. The C players become A players. The A players become superstars.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think, Ben? Is yours similar experience, different experience?
So I'm actually still very much in the service model. So there's a lot of plumbing that needs to be done. Like I'm working with businesses where, perhaps it's not, they're working with a system that's got a nice API, in which case I think, you can like, AI assistant the shit out of that and it's all good. But I'm working with a lot of businesses where, the processes perhaps aren't defined, or, it's much more chaotic. And first we have to do a lot of digging, right? And the tools that we have to do the digging are still unfortunately shovels, and there's still a lot of work. Now I could be completely wrong here, that there probably is a way to leverage AI and the kinds of stuff that we're talking about to improve that. But at the moment, I think it's a bit of a myth that you can go into, like, I see this all the time on LinkedIn and online. It's like, oh, here's a new AI product. You can just throw all of your shit at this AI product, and then suddenly you're going to have a third brain. It's like, nah, sorry. It's still a case of garbage in and garbage out. AI and LLMs are very good at making links between things, but I still think that having the context, having the structure around them leads to better results. And that at the moment, I think, is still a human's job to at least oversee that, if not do it.
Brilliant.
We
Okay. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
we talk with clients about having level 0 to level 5 within their digital operations, where level 0 is like analog. They're on pen and paper. They're on carbon copies. They're on all on premises. So they're not in the cloud whatsoever. They're not really integratable. Level 1 is what we call cloud-based silos. And I see this very commonly. Yeah, Ben, you're nodding. You're like, I know exactly what this is. You buy a bunch of tools. Nobody checks to see if they have APIs or they can integrate with each other, and you get locked up. Industry specific software is like, that is where that happens first, or a custom ERP build.
Yep.
Level 2 is an integratable cloud. So we can put everything together, but we probably haven't yet, because there's so much documentation that needs to happen to get to level 3, a unified data layer. So we have single points of truth. We can actually start automating. Level 3, getting from level like 1 or 2 to level 3, that's 6 months to a year for us every time.
Yep.
It can be 2 years in a big company.
Mm.
Level 4, we actually start automating things. And level 5, we have enough data sufficiently formatted that we can actually implement AI for end state automation. But at level 4 and level 5, you've still got a human in the loop. You can't remove a human yet. You can just reduce a human.
Interesting.
Or increase a human, right? You keep
Yeah.
the human, and you 5x their capacity.
I should say you reduce their workload, and as a result, you increase their capacity, which I've got another set of catchy ones. I've got 5 C's. I've been working on my marketing materials for the past few months
I can tell.
and getting ready for a podcast circuit. So we've been getting these stories together and bringing on a new partner. Consistency, clarity, capacity, confidence, cash flow. Those are the 5 things that result from this work. In that order. First, you get more consistent operations. Then your team gains clarity and both at the metric level and at the like prioritization level. As a result, they gain more capacity. That allows you to build confidence in the business, and ultimately it hits your bottom line as an increase in profit margin and cash flow.
Mm.
Yep. And you know what's interesting about that? You have to build that bottom up. You have to go into the weeds of the business, into the guts, into the, with your belly in the mud, and you have to find those low-hanging fruit, and you have to start from there. And so many well, the sales process has to happen top down, unfortunately. So somewhere you have to do the switcheroo of, sell the dream to the C-suite, and then you have to do the switcheroo. And now we go and find out what it's actually like. Now we find out what we actually have to do.
So Ben, it's really funny, when I was working on this business that we were thinking about the third brain, one of the guys I talked to, he said he used to work in digital transformation. And he said the number one rule of digital transformation is never talk about digital transformation. Never talk about it. And so it seems like it's failed. And it seems like digital transformation has failed. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe I'm wrong. But well, Ben, do you think it has failed? And if so, why did it fail? Particularly in the 90s and the 2000s and that era.
I mean, it's not failed for the people that sell digital transformations, because they're doing extremely well. They're doing, their purpose to funnel up taxpayers' pounds or dollars. They are doing exceptionally well at that. So it's not failed for them. Is it Gould's law? I can't remember, but the purpose of the system is what it does. So it's working actually very well for the businesses that need that. I've worked in banking. There's always a transformation going on. There's always, initiatives happening. The only way that they can support that is because they've got some huge monopoly, and they've got an enormous pile of money that they can throw onto a pile and burn every year. Right? Most businesses, the ones that are real businesses that have some kind of actual underlying unit economics that they have a handle on, they're constantly transforming, right? The idea that there's a start point and an end point and the as is state and the to be state is always the thing that you map as a consultant. The idea that has any basis in reality is just fucking nuts.
Well, because we could go into deeply philosophical territory here about the nature of reality, because like the idea that like any of us are going from point A to point B is something that should have been thrown out a couple thousand years ago, and I'm sure a lot of people did throw that out, but nobody got the message. Have you guys thought about knowledge graphs at all, or have you implemented knowledge graphs at all? Have either of you?
I have a very pretty Obsidian.
Okay, so Obsidian is a knowledge graph, basically. It's a note-taking app that is a knowledge graph.
Yeah. We use that to format data so we can upload it into a vector database more effectively. But like that's
fucking cool.
Thanks. It's so much easier if you just build a few assistants that format everything into a single notation. And because Obsidian has built-in linking, it makes it much easier for us to build like a scalable documentation or import structure that we can then very quickly visualize. I want to push back a little bit on what you said, though, Ben. I think we finally found something. I think you and I are both very much in the business of digital transformation. We've changed the words we use to talk about it because there's so much negative pushback. I think the brand of digital transformation has failed because everything is digital, and companies can't do a one-off digital transformation, to your point. I tell my clients, we benchmark to 2% of revenue. That's really what you should be spending about on like digital operations as a company. And if you're a professional service business, if you're a digital heavy business, that could go up to 5 or 10%. And as it grows, you should have some of this in-house. But fundamentally, you can't afford, if you're under 20 million, 30 million a year, you can't afford to hire a Ben or I and one or two people to assist us and the technical specialists underneath. It's too costly.
That's super interesting. Is it so? My naive interpretation of why digital transformation failed is because of the humans involved, and that there are various layers of human resistance to technology.
That is why they fail.
That's why
that is why digital transformations fail.
Yeah.
But I think digital transformation as a brand, as a buzzword, I think it just got absorbed.
Into what?
like that. All operations consulting
Oh,
is fundamentally
yeah,
digital
yeah, good.
transformation
Yeah,
now.
got it.
It's right.
So
It used to be something special, but now it's expected.
Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah, what do you think?
although I would say, from what I've seen, there is still a huge lack of implementation capability in people that do ops consulting, right? A fractional
Yeah.
COO will come in on a fairly high day rate to implement ops, and by implement ops, they quite often mean they're going to build spreadsheets and write documentation for workflows, which, as we know, is
Implement ops.
yeah, exactly. All right, that's far from implementation as you and I understand it, Michael, right? So I still think there's I've spent a bit of time around kind of government, and the ability to procure the kind of changes that are necessary to really drive outputs like outcomes like this is just crippling, right? In the UK government, and and in big business, it's often the same, right? It's the inertia that you have to overcome. So here's how I kind of experienced this recently, right? You go into an overwhelmed business where all the people are at over 80% capacity, most often than over 100% capacity, and you try and give them something new. Unless that something new has an immediate marginal benefit, it won't work, because there is absolutely no capacity in the system to be able to take on something new. What you have to do is take away something, which is where starting from the bottom up, implementing automations, giving people some of their time back comes. But that is not how this works in consulting land, right? In consulting land, it's like, hey, we've now got 5 hours of workshops for you to attend, to discover, like, don't need to drink something heavier than water to be talking about this.
Yeah, because it's so crazy. It's so much a factor of psychology too, because it's like you're dealing with human beings, and they're not like us. All of us are probably very like easy. It's pretty easy to figure out technology out for us, and it's not easy for 90% of the population to figure out technology. It's like the opposite of easy. Like every time the head goes in there, it's like just a minefield. I see something going on there. Michael, what do you think?
I mean, I'm just thinking about how many. I think half our clients have standing like training appointments for at least one senior executive. Every week, every other week, they're sitting down with a team member of mine, and they're just walking through like, this is how you use ClickUp. This is how you trigger that automation we built. It's like the way I think about it internally, we are 70 or 80% people process problems. 20 like technology problems I can solve in a week. Whatever it is. That's a 2-day thing. But like I need to document processes, get people on board. That's where we spend all the real time.
And that's the documentation part. That's where the AI can come in, right? Because that's where,
I wish the AI could do it well, but right now,
because you need high quality.
We're going to do like a human person is either going to shadow you for a day, or they're going to do a deep interview and be like, okay, then what do you do? How do you do this? AI can take an interview like that and turn it into Mermaid JS, which is a flowchart language, or Plant UML, another flowchart language. And that's super handy, because you can then load that into a diagrams.net or something, and you have a starting point for a workflow diagram. But it's never perfect. It's never there on the first shot.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Although I found something today which I believe might be the solution. So after this, check out puzzleapp.io.
It's called Puzzle App.
I've just nerd sniped Michael. He's going to be like itching to open a new tab the whole talk.
I just opened it, obviously. This is beautiful looking.
So I just had a demo of this today, and the sweet spot of how Brian, the CEO, thinks of the structure of process is just perfect, right? You've got roles, you've got people, you've got processes, and this is not an automation program, it's a documentation program.
Yeah, we used Lucidchart for a long time, and then we're just making the switch to get draw.io diagrams. But I mean, if this does,
Yep.
That looks beautiful.
ooh, and I
And-
see they're not charging me $50 per user like Lucid.
Yep. Bingo.
That's
Yeah.
that's a big one.
Yeah. And so to bring this back to an earlier point in the conversation, the idea of graphs, right? Graphs as a computer science concept are absolutely everywhere through everything we've been talking about. So, you know, I don't know if either of you have ever come across a concept of a kind of what a technique called Wardley mapping.
Nope.
So with Wardley mapping, you map out you put your users at the top of your map, and then you map out their needs, and then underneath the needs, you map out the capabilities you have to have in place in order to meet the needs. And that forms a DAG, right? It's a directed acyclic graph. The reflow that React flow that Puzzle App is built in is a graph, right? It's nodes and edges. And I think I've come to think more and more. So I spent a you know half decade in functional programming land where you know the structure of everything is super important and based on really nice mathematical primitives. And I think graphs are the data structure that holds all this stuff together, all this kind of fractal nested stuff that you unpack and then pack back up again. All of it just is expressed super well in graphs.
Very interesting. Yeah, and this gets into.
I think
Go for it.
I agree with that very heavily. Like I don't know how many times I've tried to explain to people that everything can be modeled as like just infinite graph space, and they somehow can't hold the idea of an infinite dimensional space in their head and just model it as 3 dimensions for the purpose of thinking. I'm like, oh, come on. This is such a basic concept. Apparently not, but vitally important.
Well, let's go into that. So infinite dimensions. So we got 3D, which is just the way that everything's appearing right now. We've got 4D, we've got time and space. What do you mean by dimensions after that? I think the string theory talks 11 dimensions.
So this is not like a physical dimensions thing. This is mathematical.
Oh, interesting.
So like very, very applicable to like a vector database, but more widely applicable to just how you think about designing systems and processes. It is always the thing you can only capture it at a point in time. And that is never the true thing. It's very much a map is not the territory. But when you're building AI systems, when you're building, say, an AI system for generating social media content, you can use that thought concept to then splice different dimensions together and figure out where the functional limits of a system might live, purely through theory crafting before testing actual application. And I found that to be wildly accurate in practice.
And Ben, how do you go about the same problem?
So I mean, so Wardley mapping is one that I said before, right? You know, I did a session on this earlier this week with a new client. You know, people can't see the wood for the trees. Like you need to have constraints and guardrails around how you explain things. Wardley mapping is a really good tool for that. I think this puzzle app that we're just looking at also is it has the right structure, right? It's got you go from point to point via some kind of transformation. There's another really good book called Output Thinking, which is a very practical, non-theoretical book, but essentially it's talking about building a graph of inputs and outputs linked by procedures. So those procedures are functions. So they take things that have happened earlier that have to have happened in order for this thing to run. They run the function, they output a new thing, or you know, multiple different options, right? So you've got this kind of causal structure of your business, right? So that's how I kind of think of this. it's difficult to explain because of all these different reasons that we've come up with. People are overwhelmed. They don't really want anything unless it's simple and it gives them a marginal gain. You know, the three of us probably really enjoy kind of nerding out on this stuff and like thinking about how it links to neuroscience and, you know, all this kind of like, you know, fun thinking stuff. But, you know, majority of folks just want to have a more effective business, right? They don't necessarily give a shit about all this stuff.
Yeah, oh man, this gets into interesting territory, and I want to zoom out, as all of us can do, and think about where is this all headed. So we've been talking about how there's essentially this move from A players becoming 10x. Still, there are places for B players and C players, and also there's this other thing that I've been noticing that we haven't talked about. We have this AI Whisperers meetup down here in Buenos Aires, which both of you are welcome to come speak at anytime you want to come, every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's all 5 p.m. EST to 7 p.m. EST. And it's all people. We're in Buenos Aires, but we beam speakers up. But AI Whisperers.
No, I can fly down, right?
Yeah, well, that reminds me of the conference that we're doing in October, where you definitely can fly down and you can also speak. Both of you guys are invited to come speak at the conference, and that's going to be in late October.
All I hear is expensed.
And you know, check out the vineyard down there too. And so AI Whisperers, it's like this technology. I think Peter Thiel talked about this as well. Word cells. The word cells are going to win. Finally, I'll have my time. Which is just like the AI Whisperers takes requires this finesse with language that has kind of been required maybe at higher levels of the organization, but really for the last 20 or 30 years has all been about, you know, find me the autists, find me the savants. Actually, this is a great question for both of you. And let's start with Ben first. Do you think that the math cells, that the autists are going to be out of a job? Like, do you think that the future versions of AI are going to be able to replicate the autists better than they currently do? Like these extreme experts?
No, I don't think so, because you know, all we're doing with this technology, and this is why technology is accelerating so fast. We're just building a higher platform to start from, right? So people's unique ability to do X just starts from a higher point before you start applying the unique bit. I reread Snow Crash recently.
I've been thinking about Peripheral the entire time.
Wait, can you explain what's going on there? What's Peripheral?
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, these are both. So Peripheral is a newer book by William Gibson, who is one of the founders of cyberpunk. Snow Crash is one of the original founding books of like the let's call it the second or third wave of cyberpunk. Neil Stevenson is the author, and it is part of a loosely affiliated series of books that talks about post-AGI world, very specifically, like a post-AGI UBI influenced world. And so, and in that megacorp, like very much the techno-feudalist vision of the future, I think of as like the Snow Crash Diamond Age. That is the exact version that runs that parallel. And I think that's probably the closest version to reality of the corporate structures that we've experienced today.
We're definitely gonna get into that. But Ben, what brought up the Snow Crash?
So, well, look, the Snow Crash is about this secret language that it gets discovered from an old sorcerer. And it's a way to hack people's brainstems, but it only works on the autist type, right? It only works on the digital. I'm thinking, hold on, am I thinking of the right book?
No, Snow Crash is not about that. I was gonna, because yeah, that's a different book, I think.
Yeah, it's.
Oh, hold on, I've got my Neil Stevenson wrong in public. Holy crap! Scrap the whole.
Oh, no.
Scrap the whole.
Yeah, done. Not
No,
published.
this is look, all of his books are very similar. So Snow Crash is the one with the virus.
Yeah, Namshub. The Namshub of Enki is this old.
Oh, you know,
this
you're right.
old,
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I forgot it. Yeah, you are right. So it was me.
So
Yeah.
it's this way to hack into people's brainstems, right? And it's done because the autists are the threat to this, guy who wants to, take over the world and install.
The guy who's carrying around the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's time for a reread of that. So going back to our current, not even AGI world, the job security of autists, how does that apply?
Are you saying autist or artist?
Autists,
Just to-
autists. Like
AU.
AUTIST, the savants, the traditional,
Right.
the people who are most in demand in Silicon Valley.
Yes. Okay. Just making sure. Just
Artist
okay.
is a whole other conversation, which is brings back to the Buenos Aires, which is so Buenos Aires is one of the most creative places on the planet, and they've got the most theaters they've got the most theaters in absolute numbers of any other city. So, and I'm talking about specifically acting theaters. The level of art and creativity, they used to have a movie scene, a crazy movie scene down here. But because they came close to supporting the Germans in World War II, the United States during World War II.
After.
Well, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
To be
And
very
after,
clear,
yeah.
They were a lot more supportive
Yes.
post World War II.
Yeah. Well, and this is the specific thing. So Perón, the United States government stopped giving them movie tape, the Argentines movie tape, which was only manufactured in the United States, because right before Hitler fell, they were still wish-washing. They were still like, no, we'll support the US. No, we're going to support Germans. No. And actually Perón did a giant support for the Nazis right before the Nazis fell, basically. And so FDR was like, we are not supporting these guys at all, cut off all movies. So there was a flourishing movie scene here, but it's gone again. But now I'm thinking with this new, it's coming back, and with this new AI technology, I think that Los Angeles is going to lose big time.
They already have.
Yeah.
If you see, like, the movie industry is dead right now.
Yeah.
Same with all film and TV. Like,
it's all crap.
Yeah, I get their TikToks from time to time, and they're all crying. Yeah, I think the ability of, let's call it a hyperlexic individual who has otherwise had difficulty in finding work in their life, but their ability to use AI more effectively because they believe and understand precise language. I think that is a short-term advantage caused by the current gap in the ability of the predictive models.
Oh, interesting.
But the ability of a subject matter expert to describe a thing or to capture the thing and be able to use the right words, that will not change.
That's a good point. Okay, so subject matter expert, and this is something that I delved into a lot in the previous role, is that essentially the in order to train the next generation of large language models, we need subject matter experts, because these large language models are not experts. They're the middling level of understanding. Like if you get an expert to go head to head with an LLM, yeah, they'll get the 101 base. They may get the 201, but the 301 and the PhD and the masters, those are like far outside of what the LLMs are capable of. And so it's always been that way, but becoming a subject matter expert probably is the job security. What do you think, Ben?
So I think, again, we got the platform thing, right? If you wanted to become a subject matter expert in a subject now, so case in point, 3D printing business that I've just started with my daughters, right? We need to do brands, we need to do ops, we need to do we need to find models, we need to find a business model. My daughters are not experts. I'm not an expert in all of it. Like, I'm certainly going to probably do the ops myself, but so thinking in that context of two teenagers with no work experience who need to now learn stuff, that I believe that they will be able to learn stuff quicker than would be reasonably expected, you know, before LLMs were a thing, because you can just, you know, you can get to the averagely correct answer that would, you know, that's basically what you're doing when you're asking LLM for something, is like, give me the average of what this would look like if, you know, millions of people were consulted on it. So that means that, you know, instead of starting from 0, you're starting from 50% good if you know how to use the models, if you've got the capacity to use the models, right? So what does that mean? Probably not a huge amount, because now everyone can do that, or everyone who can learn how to do that will do it. And because it's a, you know, a much bigger advantage when you have that capability, everyone's going to want to use it, because the people that don't will be left behind.
Now,
so
are you, well, I want to dig into Ben, what you said. Are you seeing your daughters in action using the LLMs? Are you interviewing them about how they're using it? How are they using it? And how is like a young generation picking up this technology?
It's built into TikTok, right? They're using it in TikTok to answer homework questions.
Shit, interesting.
Now,
but
that's not done for their benefit, clearly, right? But yeah, I mean, it's but it's like, you know, like anything, any affordance that comes along will, you know, you know, once it's into the swing of evolutionary feedback loops.
Yeah.
The thing, and this is why Michael said earlier, right? There's no way of stopping this, right? The train is not stopping because of the unfair advantage conferred by these new things, right? So the people that accelerate that will just inherently win. Like, there's no, you know, it is a competition at this point. Sorry, Michael, are you going to say something earlier?
Yeah, like so I'm 32. I look at my friend group. I would say the majority of my friends are not focused on learning or understanding these tools. And that is, like, I look at some of them and I know that they are going to be in a very bad position career-wise in 5 years as a result.
Yeah, it's so crazy because it's like I keep on talking to people, and for me, as soon as I had a crazy experience of finding this technology. I'll just share the story real quick because it's a great story. So I got caught by surprise by the crypto market. I thought when FTX was happened that it wasn't going to happen, that nothing like that was going to happen. Caught me by surprise. Had to make some drastic life changes about where I was living. I had a property in California, in the mountains of California. And so I was living in a cabin, renting out the main house, and I had to leave the cabin for the 1968 trailer with no running water in the middle of a winter in the mountains of California. And so then I was getting a job as a bus driver, school bus driver, for various reasons. And I was just like, there's no way that I was going to get out of this hole from bus driving. And then this 3.5 shows up, and it's like, wait a minute, this is interesting. What's going on here? And I had been out of technology for the past like 5 years before that. And all of a sudden it's just like, oh shit, this is the thing I've been waiting for to teach me all, not like the way that I learn is like this in the podcast where I ask people questions, I have one-on-one conversations. Now I have that in a simulated way. And then 4 showed up and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. This is all making a lot of sense. And then I started talking to people and nobody was curious. Like, even the engineers aren't curious. Like 90% of the engineers that I talk to barely use the thing. And it's just like, for me, that like I could immediately see that it could code better than I'll ever be able to code. So like I'm using it for that, but they wouldn't use it. And it's just, actually, this is a good thing to end with. The last 10 minutes. What has been your experience talking to people? Because both of you have taken up quickly to this technology. Both of you have implemented it into your business. Both of you are helping other businesses implement it into their businesses. What are the kind of anecdotes that you have from talking to people about this technology?
I can share one from the functional programming, you know, super academic Haskell community. They don't like it because it's not deterministic. They don't like it because they can't call a function and get the same answer back the next time they do it, right? They don't like you know, they don't believe that you can then use it to engineer stuff because it lacks that reproducibility and the determinism.
Yeah. That's a
Which
good
I
stupidest thing I've
find
ever heard.
both, I mean, technically that's absolutely correct.
Right, but I
It
mean,
somewhat misses
anyone
the
with
wood for the trees, right?
give me an ounce of practical expertise and I'll point you to a fuzzy logic problem that you can solve with a 99% accuracy in a
Wait, can you
simple
give
estimation.
can you give an example of that? Because that wasn't solid for me. What you said there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you cannot easily build like a functional programming workflow that is going to look at, let's say, 1,000 images an hour and identify which images are most likely to have people wearing their hats backwards. That's just too complex of a concept to do without like a large depth of AI training. But I can use GPT-4 Vision off the shelf and it's going to pick that up at least 70, 80% accuracy, probably more like 90 or 95.
So what do functional coding languages actually solve?
So I'll take Haskell for example here. So back when I got into Haskell, so I was doing a lot of Python. Python is a great language for building stuff quickly, but it doesn't have what's called a type system, which means that you get a lot of shit that makes it through to production, like a lot of mistakes that would be caught. So Haskell has this very, very rigorous mathematically derived type system, which means that if you write a function that takes a string, a bit of text and try and give it a number, it won't let you compile and run that. So my kind of entry into the world of Haskell was, and it's a massive learning curve, right? I'd spent days trying to get this bloody program to work. And that was a database client and a UI. And I wanted to pull some data out of a database and show a time series.
Yeah.
And I was banging my head against this thing, but literally for days, right? Compile error, you haven't lined this thing up with that thing, it doesn't work. And I finally got it to compile. And I was like, okay, my mental model now is that, okay, now I need to debug it. Now I need to, now I'm going to run it and it's going to break. And I ran it and it did exactly what I expected the first time. And that was like a light bulb moment. But that is the polar opposite in terms of affordances than what Michael just described, which is, we don't care now that it's not just that the code's messy, the input and the code is messy, but you can do it so many more times and so much more capacity. So Haskell is really, really good for building correct systems, which is very important if you want to fly aircraft or run risk systems in banks, or make sure that you don't drop messages out of a message queue, and it's super important. But it's only it really comes into its own there, and it's maybe not so it's not so important to be that rigorous everywhere else.
And so the engineers that you're talking to about this thing, do they use it to help them code the functional programming? Is ChatGPT or Claude very good at actually coming up with code for Haskell?
Well, so this is the other thing, right? I haven't rigorously tested this.
Yeah.
But I suspect, and I've sort of, anecdotally seen this, that the languages that are in the mainstream, like Python and TypeScript, which are, loads and loads of examples of on
exactly.
GitHub, like orders of magnitude more.
Yeah.
You're just naturally going to be better. And the experience of writing Haskell is somewhat different as well. You don't just write a shitload of code, you write the types and then you have the compiler help you kind of fill in the code, which is not how an LLM would generate text. So yeah, I would suspect, I haven't really tried to use it beyond the very basics in Haskell. I would suspect that it probably wouldn't be as useful as writing TypeScript.
Same problem with Urbit. So last 5 minutes or so, Michael, any anecdotes you can share about talking with people and like the kind of, not necessarily pushback, but maybe just or ignorance or just like something, what happens to people about this technology?
So I've got a few. First off, a friend of mine was in a job search recently and they decided they didn't want to use AI to help with their cover letters or to customize their resumes or anything. And it took them a while to get a job.
Yeah.
And I think they probably could have gotten it faster if they were customizing everything, or if they had an AI just spamming their resume out like everyone else was. So that's example number one, right? Big need for them. They still were not using the tools available. Number two, probably a little like closer to home for most people. We have a client that wanted to deploy a chatbot. And this is the conversation I end up having with everyone. Well, you want to deploy a chatbot. What do you want it to do? We want our customers to be able to ask questions of it. And, we want it to be able to sell things to them even.
Yeah.
And obviously, or maybe not so obviously, there are legal ramifications to that have now been documented. And you don't want to put a customer-facing chatbot like that, especially not if it's powered by a GPT-4 or some other model that you haven't fine-tuned for your purposes.
Yeah.
Another layer on that, how many of them actually have the data formatted and usable in ways that we could load everything up? No, none of them. Because they all think, oh, you can just export everything and then upload it and you're done. Half these tools don't even have export functions. Like just getting the data out is hard enough. It's not in the right format when we get it either. So like that's yeah, we can do that. I've got a client right now. That's the 12-month goal, is to have a tool internally that can support their team and have that, we call it a whisper agent, an AI assistant that is only internally facing. That's our 12-month goal.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. It's the icing on the cake of having 12 months of improving all your shit, right? It's not the cake.
Yeah. And we told him, like, I'm not going to tell you how we're going to build it yet, because whatever I say is going to be out of date and we're going to have a better system in 6 months and 9 months.
Okay, that's the conference talk right there. How to build a business in an age of acceleration. Like, what are you supposed to take psychedelics? Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, to go to the future. Well,
it works for some.
Yeah, it works. Thank you so much for both for coming on the show. Ben, how can people find out what you're working on?
So I'm at Commando Dev on Twitter/X and also on LinkedIn. And my business is called missioncontrol.dev, missionctrl.dev.
And Michael, same for you.
I am at Gent of Tech on LinkedIn and Twitter and all those places. That's GENTOFTECH. And my company can be found at the number 3 rdbrain.co.
Cool. And we'll put those all in the show notes. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.